Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for an EarthEcho STEMExplore virtual career connection today. We will be talking with Aditi Jayarajan. She is a bat biologist at the University of Florida, and I'm so excited to have her here with us today. My name is Casey, and I'm a programs manager here at EarthEcho, and I will help to host this event alongside Aditi. Now, just a reminder, there's a lot of folks online today, so if you could please be respectful in the chat spaces, and also, if we experience any technical issues, please just hang tight and be patient, and we'll be right back. Also, as a reminder, this event is being recorded and will be available for playback right here on EarthEcho's YouTube channel immediately after the event. Now, EarthEcho International is a global nonprofit founded on the belief that youth have the power to change our planet. Reaching more than 2 million people in 146 countries, we provide original content, immersive experiences, and trusted resources to empower young people to become leaders and problem solvers in their communities and around the world. And this program today is part of STEMExplore, our program that brings inspiration to life by telling stories of dynamic female professionals in STEM careers. We, of course, want to thank our program sponsor, Raytheon Technologies, for their support of women in STEM, just like Aditi. Now, one last housekeeping reminder, you can send in questions anytime throughout today's live event via chat, and we will break through today's presentation to answer your questions. If you're live in the Zoom, use that Q&A feature that Zoom provides. It works really well for us. And if you're on YouTube, feel free to use that chat space to send in questions for Aditi, and we'll make sure that she answers those as we go along. So let's go ahead and get started. So Aditi, it is so wonderful to have you here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to start sharing my
That's perfect. And Aditi, while you're getting that set up, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're tuning in live from, and maybe a short synopsis of what you do, because we're going to definitely dive into your career today.
Awesome. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself first. So my name is Aditi. I am a PhD student at the University of Florida in the Florida Museum of Natural History, which means that I get to sit in the mammalogy collections under the big moose. Okay. I'm originally from Bangalore, India. And basically, I grew up over there. I did my bachelor's in science in microbiology, chemistry, and zoology. And then I did a master's in microbiology. And then I chose to do a PhD in zoology, where I pretty much sit in a museum and I get to study my bats, and it makes me so happy. So moving on. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what we'll do today is we've got a series of questions for Aditi. They're kind of our top 10, if you will, but they're just not quite 10. But these are our frequently asked questions of a lot of our STEMExplore mentors, and we think this is going to guide a really good conversation today. So let's just start right off, Aditi, and follow on the heels of you talking about what you're doing. Can you explain a little bit more to our audience out there of what exactly you do for a living?
Sure. So I may throw out a few big words at you, and I will explain exactly what I do. So today, we're going to be looking at mammals, okay? Bats are mammals, just like all of us. And the technical term for what that would be a mammologist, a person who's a scientist who studies mammals. So this could be any mammal, right? Like all over here, we always look at like these gorgeous mammals. We're always captivated by them. In particular, I'm a chiropterologist, which is a very big word for a person who studies bats. And I'm going to show you some really cute bats. Now, throughout my talk today, you're going to be seeing different bats from maybe the places that I've been to. These two bats in particular were on my last field trip last year to the Caribbean islands. And I got to meet these really like chilled out bats. When I say chilled out, each bat, yes, reacts differently to people. I have been trained in order to handle bats, and I've received all my shots. So I'm so happy to like tell you a little bit about what I do in particular.
So can you expand on this a little bit more and tell us what an average day looks like for you?
All right. So it really depends on where I am. For example, if I am doing field work, and I don't know if any of you read these books when you were small, but like I really did. I used to love these like choose your own adventure, right? And so if I was choosing my own adventure in the field, and if I was looking at A, B, or C, which to me would be the easiest cave to get into? Okay, and I want you all to like sort of remember this slide, because like you're gonna look at it later. You're
Well,
gonna have
this
to
is a
think
fun activity. So maybe our audience out there, put in the chat space, A, B, or C. So you said, Aditi, the easiest cave to get to?
yeah, the easiest cave for me to crawl into. I'm a sort of a very small person. I usually fit into things easily, but I want you to keep in mind, which one do you think is the easiest one? And so one cave over here, you can kind of see it. The other one looks like it has an opening, and the third one you can kind of see like a lot of vegetation. Correct?
Okay, we've got some votes in for B.
For B, okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I'm going to show you what A looks like. This is what A looks like. So as you're getting to the cave, um, there's a large body of water. You may notice that there's a turtle at the bottom right-hand corner. We spotted this turtle in the middle of the day. We couldn't believe it. Our advisor had walked away for a few minutes, and I was with my teammates, my lab mates, and then we saw this turtle and we couldn't believe our own eyes. So basically, in these islands, there are these things called sinkholes which are formed, which are basically faults in the ocean. And some of these caves tend to be underwater, as you can see. So they can be very, very stressful to get to, because we had to walk all the way around this in order to get to the cave. And it can be very like rocky. So you have to be very careful when you're walking. On this particular field trip, I fell down. So you need to be very, very careful. Now, if you chose B, so B happens to be a video of me climbing out of this cave. It looked very big in the picture, correct? And you can see that field work isn't as all glamorous as it looks. Yes, today, I'm presented well, but most of the time in field, you get dirty, you get messy, it's hot. There are lots of like mosquitoes, no-see-ums. And trust me, it was easy for me to get in and out of this cave. A lot of my friends, they're a lot taller than me, so it was kind of like when you were trying to get out of the cave, there were lots of crickets near the entrance, so you have to be very careful when you're doing field work. Now,
And
if you
Aditi, we've got a question about Cave A before you move on to C.
Yes.
Was Cave A an underwater cave? That's coming from Piper from Primetime Palm Beach County.
A part of it, yes, at certain times of the year will be
And I think, do we see the opening on the upper right picture right here?
So that was like one of the openings, yes.
Okay, great.
And then if you had chosen C, you remember all that vegetation. So my advisor, one of the other things he's taught me in life is to use a machete. And so we basically, sort of cut our way through the underbrush, and then it was sort of this rocky overhang. And we went inside this cave, and it was low tide at that point of time. And then my advisor looked at me and he said, "Oh yeah, you're small enough, you can fit in." So as we're going into the cave, some of my friends couldn't fit in. And so then I kept going further and further. And as you can see, some of these caves can be very tight spaces. Like I could not fit through it. I could smell the bats, yes, they were there, but we just couldn't get to them. They were probably way into the cave. So in case you're having a lab day, I'm going to show you this really quick time lapse. It's of our mammalogy collections. You can see the bats. It's really quick. So maybe Casey or you can replay it later, but we've stopped right at the back of the collections where we have these really large sperm whale skulls. I mean, they take up like the whole portion in the back. They're really, really neat to see. And I'm really happy that I get to sit in these collections in the midst of this and learn about my work.
I love that. That's great. And it looks like a lot of our audience today, Aditi, chose Cave B. So I have a question for you before we move on to this next question.
Yeah.
Out of those 3 caves, what would be your top choice to go into?
See, while Cave B was easiest to get into, I actually like all 3 caves because I discovered I was not claustrophobic. I discover that I have a better sense of judgment when somebody else is able to do something along with me. But cave A, it really pushed me because, it's like sometimes I get scared as well, like doing this field work. Sometimes it can be hard. And I think it's okay to be scared. It's good to be cautious. Um, I just like really loved cave A, maybe because there was a turtle that we spotted in it. And so maybe, I mean, it was so beautiful. Each cave is so unique and beautiful. So
That is great. Excellent. Okay, so to move on, what is one of the coolest things that you've ever done or that you've ever seen as part of your job?
okay, so this is a bit of a cheat because if you live in Gainesville, Florida, this is just a time lapse that I took, not time lapse, this is a slow motion that I took on my cell phone, and you'll probably like hear the people. But these are, we basically have 3 bat houses, okay? And about 500,000 bats come out every day, and people come to see them. And I'll just play the video. Can you imagine all these bats coming out at the same time? And my first inclination is to like, pretty much, what's the best angle I can get? How many bats are coming out? I love using photography as well. So I get to do my job and I get to use photos and videos and tell people about why I think bats are so cool. Another part of my job, which you're probably going to learn later, is the fact that I use 3D prints. And so this in particular is a 3D print of a bat skull that is being cured. And I just thought it looked like the coolest thing. Look at its teeth. And I pretty much print these out and send them out to schools.
I love that. That's great. So real quick, back to the UF Bat House. We have a question coming in from Primetime Palm Beach County, and they want to know what time of day were those bats flying out of the house?
So it really depends on the time of the year that you're going to see them. So it's around sunset. And when I last took, I mean, I've walked there with my husband, I've walked there with my aunt and uncle. Everybody's like, okay, when are they going to come out? And as dusk starts to settle in is when they start coming out. You'll see the stragglers, and then, they all just start coming out all at once. It's just one of those things that you have to see in person if you ever drive up to Florida, like Gainesville. I know Palm Beach is a couple of hours away, but I want to show you this other really exciting thing. So I was chosen as one of like 20 students to go to Peru and do a field trip, okay? And it was really exciting because we get to see how a person releases a bat. So this is a myotis bat, and you're going to have to watch it very carefully because this bat is so quick. So you just watch it. And you can see researchers over there. They're recording the bat as it leaves his hands because we can get the call data from it and then be able to identify a particular species. So this was pretty much one of those nights. We were in the midst of the Amazon rainforest and we got to do this. And what I was doing was I was busy photographing these things.
That is awesome.
So I was actually going to tell you a little bit about where I started and what my story is. I told you before that I'm originally from Bangalore, India. And this is my mom's house. So we pretty much live in an old house that was built in the 40s. And it's got a nice yard. And do you notice this like massive tree over here? Do you have any idea what kind of tree it would be?
That's a great question. So what kind of tree? That is a massive tree.
Yeah, my grandmother planted it. And it's a fruiting tree. So it fruits every year.
Okay,
so maybe,
let's see if we have any responses on that. And while we're waiting for guesses on what that tree is, I do want to give a hello to our Bright Futures group that is joining us today, our friends at Primetime Palm Beach County, and our friends at Brookfield Zoo as well. So I have a couple of guesses in for that tree. I see orange tree.
Right? Think more
mango tree.
Sorry, what did you say?
Mango.
Mango, if you guess mango, yes. My grandmother loved this tree and she planted it. And little did she know that it would influence my existence because actually, after I got married, I used to come home every day to have a cup of tea with my mom and my aunt before I would go back home. And so I would stop by and I would always stop by. And as I'm leaving, it would be sunset, right? And what would be coming and visiting there? There was a roost near my mom's house, and it was in this park called Cubbon Park. And these bats, they leave there every day. And these are mega chiroptera bats, meaning they're like flying foxes with like a 6 feet wingspan. So they're incredibly large. And they would stop by this tree. There was this one bat that would always stop there and sort of like check it out. And so I used to photograph them all the time. And maybe that's why I like them so much. I don't know. It's a sense of comfort. I was curious about them.
I think that's great. I think it's wonderful to point out these big bats because of course bats, can the people's views on bats can be very different, somewhat negative. And so I know I love bats and I love the fact that the fruit bats are some of the bigger ones and the
Yeah.
ones that people find kind of quote unquote scary.
Well, I
They're
mean,
fruit eating bats.
yeah, they just come out, they hang out, they eat fruit, they actually like there's such good pollinators. Each bat has its position and what it does in an ecosystem. And also, like, I come from a country where people are like very superstitious about these creatures. Even where I did my work in the Bahamas, a lot of people tend to be superstitious. And maybe there are negative views attached to them because we don't understand them. We don't see them at times during the day where we could just like, oh yeah, okay, that's what that bat is doing. We just don't see them at the same time. And so maybe we're just a little unsure. And I know I love watching horror movies and they're always like the biggest villain. And to me, they actually do a lot of good for the environment. And I will probably point this out later in my talk.
That's great. So Aditi, and I do have a question coming in, and I think I'm going to save it for this section because it's pretty good. But are there any hardships that you've had to overcome? And if so, how did you do that?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me this question. I think this is a question that I'm sure many of you have. You wonder if there are any hardships you have in science. You do all the time, especially like coming from a research background in India. It can be hard, like trying to establish yourself. But to me, the thing that like hits me home the most is my family. This is a picture of my family. If you think I am interesting, trust me, you should meet these people. They're so wonderful, and they all support me so much. This is me. You can kind of see that like this is just after I fell off a bicycle and like I had this awful gash over my head. And my parents are here, my in-laws, my husband, my brother and sister-in-law, my cousins. Some of these people in this photo, when I think about them, like they've supported me, they've been through with, all these like points in my life, and I miss them every day. I miss the big events, I miss the little events, I miss the birthdays, and I miss the anniversaries and the deaths. And it's hard on that. It can be hard, but I think it's important that they all support me in what I do and what I study, especially my husband. So incredibly supportive, and I just think it's really good if you have that sort of like mental support and help, especially when it comes to family, because being so far away from them, they're on another continent. And so I have to battle with time differences as well when I try to call them.
That is, I love that you use this picture. I think it's so
Yeah.
great.
I set it up. Usually I'm not in the pictures because I'm taking the picture, but I set this up.
That's great. So Aditi, this question we do have coming in from one of our students that has joined us today. And Summer asks, what were the steps that you took to become a mammologist? She is highly interested in this field.
Wow. Okay. So I'll tell you where I started. I am a secret herpetologist because I started out my career working with herbs back home in India. So basically, I did a lot of genetic work, and I studied frogs, lizards, and snakes. And I have to thank my former collaborators with whom I still collaborate with today. So basically, I worked in a research lab and I started applying to school. And when I was looking for a school, I specifically wanted to work in a museum and I wanted to work on bats. And I'm going to show you my advisor later, but pretty much I emailed him. I told him about my interest. I read a few of his papers. He ever so graciously spoke to me when I was in India. And when I came here with my husband, when my husband was doing his studies, we got in touch again. And then I applied to UF. And so I didn't get in the first time I applied to UF. I want to make that point. I didn't get into UF the first time around. But the second time around, I had a stronger CV. I had published a paper in the Royal Society, Proceedings of Royal Society B. And so I think that helped my case a lot, because maybe people don't know where you come from. You just have to work a little hard at it. Contact the right people. In fact, if you like a person who's close in age to you, it doesn't have to be a professor. You can contact a graduate student and maybe just say, hey, what are the steps you took? So maybe email the professor, get in touch with them, and see if you actually like doing that.
That's great. And I think this comes to our next question. So what advice would you give to students? You've already given some pretty good advice. So do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yes, please. So I come from India where I was set up in a lab. I pretty much got to do my own journey where, I was in charge of the wet lab. I got to tell people what to do. I got to learn all these key things, these key aspects of being in a lab, which I think is really important. It's more about people management. For me in particular, my advisor, David Reed, is absolutely wonderful. He has encouraged me so much, especially after my field work fell through. We lost our permits, and I was wondering, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to study for my PhD? And I remember my husband happened to come into town on that same night that it happened. And, having him there, that support, I just decided, okay, I'm going to use our museum collections in order to study my study system. Also, I just want to stress on having sort of a team with you. It really helps. Trust me, especially when you're in field or you're in the lab, you need a group of people who kind of support you. I think this especially applies in field work when you kind of put your life in their hands and you expect respect and support. And I mean, they are so wonderful. They have supported me through every crazy thing I've wanted to do.
That's great.
Having a good mentor is key. You can, and I took this photo in a dark cave, so I'm very proud of this photo as well.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. Having a mentor is key. People you can lean on is key. And that is just wonderful, wonderful advice. And Aditi, you're such a great mentor to everyone that is out here.
Let me show you a quick time lapse of us sitting in a cave, and we were measuring bats. And I thought this video highlights us working together so well. We were able to get our work together done so fast. And this may happen in school as well, when you have to do group work. All these things that you learn in school, maybe getting up early, maybe getting yourself together, dressed, it all applies to your adult life. And I think just being happy with what you do, finding something that you really like is key.
That's great. So now our last question that we have. So again, I just want to remind everybody, if you do have questions for Aditi, please ask those in the chat, because we are coming up on our final question break. So 2 parts to this question. What innovation in your field are you most excited about? And this part is really cool. And how does your work contribute to a sustainable future?
Right. I'm so glad you asked me that question. So along with the help of Dr. Ed Stanley and Dave Blackburn's lab in UF, we got the CT scanner, okay? And this thing costs I think over $2 million. Basically, we use our museum collections to scan our specimens. And what this does is that it gives you a permanent record of each animal that has been collected. Now, if you look at some of these bats over here, these have been prepared by somebody in 1929. That is nearly 100 years ago. Can you imagine that somebody has They had the permits, they took the time out, and they preserved all these specimens so beautifully. That's what I love about working in a museum. The museums are where it's at. It's where your future is at. You can use these collections. They're such an important resource. And this is just a CT scan of a bat that I thought was really neat and cool. You can see that its teeth are lit up. And this was just, I just played around with the colors, but pretty much your scans help you study these organisms. And you can actually view this on spaces like Morphosource, which is freely available. A lot of teachers, educators use it. A lot of art students use it. Maybe, I don't know if you're really into science, you could be into art and think about something in that sense. Personally, when I attended Dr. Bruce McFadden's class at UF, when I first joined, he was talking about broader impacts of science and society. And so I was thinking about how I could team up. And so basically, the Scientists in Every Florida School is a program which gets like scientists into classrooms. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with teachers in classrooms where I, look at these bats, I 3D print them out, and I offer lesson plans where, we work with the students. They're kind of like, look at this. You can also do this virtually now. And so if you're ever interested, please locate me. We can actually provide these virtually to you, and you can sort of work these together with a classroom. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and I think the young minds out there really love working with these things, sort of asking questions about them. I think it's the way to go. And yeah, I just really like communicating about my science.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. So I think we are on our last question break. So I do have a lot of questions coming in from our audience today. So the first question I have is, how much equipment do you have to carry in to any of those caves if you're doing research?
Okay, so keep in mind, I'm a very small person, okay? I weigh about 116 pounds, which is not very much. And sometimes our equipment is like 80 pounds. So we have to carry a lot of field gear with us. And this is just so that we are careful in field. We have our first aid kits, we have our trays, we have our equipment for measuring, we have our bags, we have our gloves. We have so many things, and usually the person doing the field trip will be the one carrying, we prepare a bag every day. So at the start of every day, I will have my bag with me, and it's all there together, put together, and we've got a list that comes with it. Sometimes, these will fit into 2 or 3 bags, and we try to be, under the weight limit, but sometimes it goes over the weight limit, and it's a pain lugging it around in field. But I think this brings up the important point of how I need to be fit, and how it's so important to be fit to be able to carry these things and work in field.
That's great. So another question we have from our friends at Primetime Palm Beach County is, as a bat biologist, how much time do you spend in the field versus working in the lab?
Right. So currently, right now, I'm done with my field work. As I told you before, we didn't get our permits. So previously, at least, let's say last year, I had spent like half a semester trying to plan my field trip. You have to plan for these things really microscopically, down to every detail, from what permits you need to have, to who needs to come with you, to who may need a visa. So I'm an Indian citizen, and I always need a visa to go anywhere. So I have to apply for these things very well in advance. This is apart from taking classes. This is apart from me teaching undergraduate students. So it requires a lot of planning. And when I spend a couple of days in field, it may be just 5 to 10 days, and then you come back with all your data, and then you have to sit and analyze it. So it depends on the question you're asking, but it really drives home the fact that you have to be well prepared, well organized, and you have to apply for so many things, especially with the museum. They want to care about your safety and that you know what you're doing. And so it really depends. But nowadays, what my days generally look like, ever since this lockdown, I've been actually really been privileged to be able to work from home. So I can log into my software and then look at my CT scans. And this, has been able, like I've really been able to work during this time. So I'm very lucky.
Excellent. So when you are doing research in different countries, are you allowed to bring the bats back to the US for further study?
So this is a great question because it really depends on the kind of permit you have. As of now, currently, I don't have any active permits that allows me to like bring any specimens back into the country. But if you remember, the specimen I showed you from 1929 was actually collected in Florida. So there are people who've collected these things over several different collecting trips. It really depends on your field permit and what you are allowed to do. And usually the people who are in charge in the Bahamas, they will like check your work and see that you're not carrying any extra specimens or not doing anything that isn't untoward. So we always like go by the book and we just get whatever we need. And in case we need to add to our collection, we bring back specimens. But usually, our collection is pretty much pretty good for now. I'm very proud of our little collections, and Verity Mathis, our collections manager, is really incredible at keeping all of them safe.
Awesome. So I have one last question for you today, Aditi. Can you tell us what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that there are so many young people who are excited to hear about this. I've actually been a part of a couple of different series over this time, over the summer, some of which have been even with my friends back home in India. And it's really nice to be able to tell you a little bit about what I do and have you excited about it. I always go on Twitter and I'm like posting like a lot of academic stuff. But with my Instagram, you'll notice that I just post a lot of stuff. Sometimes I see a gator. Who knows? I just post pretty things. I like the fact that young people are so excited about like learning about science and that they want to be a part of it. And it gives me a lot of hope because I think that's the part I like best about my job. It's just about sharing my science, and I'm learning about different ways to communicate with young people. I have a 10-year-old nephew who I have my deepest conversations with. You may have seen him in the picture that I showed you with my family. But I think it's really great that so many young people out there get the opportunity to do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aditi. This has been so wonderful. Thank you again for joining us again for STEMExplore. I should mention that Aditi has joined us before last year. And so if you want to check that out, we do have a recorded session of hers from 2019 where she talks a little bit more about her work and her journey to get here. And it looks like everybody in the chat is thanking you for your time as well. So we do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. We love having you back on. You're just such a pleasure to talk to, and I think you give us hope. So it's really exciting to hear about your work, but also to hear about your journey to get there.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, Aditi did mention that she has worked with scientists in every Florida school. This is a group that we work closely with here at EarthEcho as well, and they do a really great job. So we have some of their social media handles here, as well as their website if anybody wants to dive into scientists in every Florida school, but as well as University of Florida and the Florida Museum as well. So be sure to follow along on social media and check out all these great resources that Aditi has provided, even her personal social media handles. So you can also stay connected with EarthEcho on our social media channels, and be sure to visit earthecho.org to find out more information about all of our exciting programs, including upcoming virtual events just like this one. We have rolled out a short summer series of STEMExplore, and we hope that you can join us for more and learn all about our programs right there on earthecho.org. Again, we want to thank Raytheon Technologies for their support of women in STEM. So on behalf of EarthEcho International, thank you for joining us, and keep exploring. Bye-bye, everyone.